Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. I'm Ann Papayoti, and today I'm welcoming back my beautiful sister-in-law, Maria Papayoti.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so today's show, while the subject of it is imperative that we talk about it, it can also be sensitive. So I just want to say that up front. It is the month of May. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, and that's why Maria and I are both wearing the color green, which is the color of mental health awareness. And interesting, the color green is to represent really hope, because green represents new life and renewal. And it's really to say that mental health can be recovered. You know, there's a recovery process like renewal and regrowth. There can be healing, there can be personal growth. So it's really a color of hope. So you'll often see the green ribbons that you see that that we wear for different causes for advocacy and awareness. And so we're wearing our green today for this cause. And I just wanted to go ahead and say up front, we are not mental health professionals. We're here to bring our personal experiences with mental health and to share our experiences with family members as well. So welcome. We want to talk about some things. We've, of course, learned a lot. This is a very important subject. But Maria, let's just start. And I think our audience knows from our previous time together that you are a PhD, you're well studied. And anytime I need any help with research on anything, Maria's my go-to girl, right? So I said, Maria, please join me to talk about this today. And I thank you for that. But when we talk about mental health, really, what is it?
Well, really, it encompasses everything, right? It's our emotional state, our physical state, our relationships with loved ones, with friends, with coworkers. It really is something that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we forget to.
Yeah. So I talk a lot about, how we think creates how we feel, and how we feel determines how we act. So I do a lot of mindset coaching, right? And I think when we get down to it, that has a lot to do with mental health, right? So how we deal with stress, maybe.
Yes, absolutely. How we deal with stress, how we take care of ourselves. Really, we all run to the doctor and get all our blood tests and our physicals and our colonoscopies. But do we ever stop and think, how is my mental health today?
Right, exactly. And it's not just adults, it's childhood, it's teenagers, it's adults, right? There's a mental health checkup, maybe check in. There's something we need to look at this. So it's how we think creates how we feel, creates how we act, which creates our consequences in life. And I find that decision making, choices, they're all tied into mental health. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So if it has to do with how we cope with life, if it has to do with how we realize our abilities, our relationships you mentioned, at work, at home, it's something tied into even our physical well-being, I heard you mention, then it's something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's body and mind, right? We always talk about that. How our body feels affects our mind, and how our mind feels affects our body, right? So I know we're going to talk about it. Physical exercise. It doesn't only help our body, but also our mind. So that shows how connected those are.
So why do you think we don't pay as much attention to our mental health?
Oh, and that's a great question. That is why we're here today, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we?
I really think it's because it's invisible, if you will, invisible.
Excellent. Well, that's a great point,
Yeah.
right? It's easy to go get our blood test, right? And that's something that can be measured and you can get your lab results.
Mm,
But how do we check in how our mind is doing?
yeah.
What is the level of happiness that we're experiencing? What is the level of sadness that we're experiencing? How are we
Yeah.
doing today?
Yeah, that's key. How do we measure our mental health? Um, yeah. And so invisible, one thing. What about just the stigma around it in general? Physical health, it's like, okay, I can measure, I can even get on the scale and say, okay, I'm gaining weight. I need to pay attention to um, the food I'm consuming or the calories I'm consuming. I don't feel good in my clothes, so I'm going to start exercising. We can recognize those physical signals and all of that, and maybe we are more ready to embrace. We want to go to the doctor on some kind of regular, even the dentist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even the
Mm-hmm.
dentist, but mental well-being, okay, it's invisible. There's nothing really to measure except possibly some kind of internal, maybe monitor on sadness
Mm-hmm.
versus happiness or anger. What about that? How are we dealing with emotions like anger? What about relationships, the success of relationships versus,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I think you also you said an important word. You did say taboo,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Stigmas, yeah.
And stigma.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it might be easier for us to say, hey, I checked my cholesterol, it's kind of high, so
Yeah.
I'm going to have to watch my diet, exercise more,
Yeah.
possibly medication. But how many people have you heard say, I went to a psychiatrist and I'm suffering from depression. So, like you said, there is still stigma attached, unfortunately, to it.
I'm a word person as a writer, and also I really think language matters. The words we use matter. And I have seen some change in that. Like I've done some presentations on mental health, but I call it mental fitness. And I use analogies with physical fitness, right? So mental fitness, and you and I talked recently when we were talking about doing this show that it's it's like you have to strengthen, right? That mental muscle. You have to pay attention to it just like anything else. And so to break down some negative stereotypes, sometimes words do matter. So we one of the resources that Maria and I love is we call it NAMI, but anyway, it's National Alliance on Mental Illness. Well, illness is a word we don't actually see often anymore. We see mental health as opposed to mental illness, but NAMI has a great resource where they talk about ways to say things in a more empowering way to help remove stigma. And they say, instead of saying something like a brain disorder or brain disease, to say a mental health condition. That's really the new terminology. And I think that we were also discussing how there's been a lot of celebrities stepping up and talking about their journeys with mental health and taking out the stigma of seeking help and therapy. And we'll talk more about what signs and when to seek professional help. But just by having people who are in the limelight saying, hey, I sometimes need help, or I look for help. I've had some breakdown in my mental health, and so I've looked to build it back up. But one thing they said for mental health is, rather than to say something like my daughter has schizophrenia, it's my daughter is schizophrenic. They say label the give the label of the disease and not labeling your
The
daughter,
person,
the
yes.
person, right? So things like that. Um, go ahead. Your thoughts on that, on words?
No, absolutely. I think what you were saying, that we do have a lot of people that are in the limelight and they are stepping up, like for many other conditions and illnesses and diseases. And we really need to do more of that when it comes to mental health. I do feel like there's so much we don't know about the brain. To me, it's still one of those organs that we have not been able to completely understand everything that happens. And really, it is the brain that houses our personality, that our actions, our reactions. So hopefully there's going to be more and more research applied so we can help all the people that do have a mental health condition, which, by the way, as we looked at the statistics, I know I was a little taken back. It's a lot more common than we think. It is 1 in 5 US adults do have a mental health condition. 1 in 5. That is a big number. That is a big number.
And when we talk about mental health conditions, let's give some examples, right? So, because before we were talking about, we all need to pay attention to our mental health. Okay. That doesn't mean we're going to be diagnosed with a mental health condition, but we all need to pay attention to our mental health so that it doesn't become a condition, right? But still, 1 in 5 will be diagnosed with a condition. That's what we're saying. We'll experience one. That could be anxiety, depression, can go beyond that, and it can be
more serious.
A disorder, bipolar disorder,
schizophrenia, which you mentioned.
Schizophrenia.
Yep.
Borderline personality disorder. There are many, many mental health conditions and disorders that are diagnosed from childhood on. They present at different times in life. And we'll talk about some of the warning signs, but all of us can hit burnout. All of us can hit a breaking point. All of us have to watch for signs in our lives and know when to reach for help or to ask for help. But before that, what can we do? We can always be trying and have a goal of staying mentally fit. And that's what we're saying that goes and corresponds with being physically fit and having those kind of check-ins.
Yes.
So I think it starts kind of with belief system, right? I've done a show about your belief systems. What do you believe, right? What do you believe? So we said that mental health it's somewhat invisible, right? There was a lot of conversation that started during COVID, right? Because there was a lot going on. And even the virus was invisible, right? So if you didn't believe in it, your actions, represented that. If you did believe in it, you did things that showed that you did, right? So because mental health, based on your beliefs, because it's invisible, it can be overlooked. It can be taken for granted. It can be denied even, right? But it's a very real part of who we are and how we relate to others, as Maria said, as friends, as coworkers, as family, as leaders, as partners. But if it's left without attention, negative thinking and victim attitudes can kind of consume us and start deteriorating, leaving relationships in ruins, goals, objectives fall into the wayside and stuff like that. So I like to say, begin with, what do we believe? Do we believe our actions matter when it comes to our mental health? Do we believe they matter when it comes to our physical health? Probably most of us would say, yeah.
Absolutely.
It matters. If I sit on the couch and eat bonbons and drink a whole bottle of wine, at some point it's going to catch up to me. So do we believe in reverse that our actions matter, that we can help ourselves stay mentally fit? So what exactly do you believe, listeners? And what exactly do you practice? Think about that for a moment.
That is a great question, and I want to talk a little bit about that.
Please do.
So for me, exercise. That's important. Sleep.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't sleep last night, by the way.
Very important. So what do we each do? I mean, we know what we're supposed to do, right? They say your sleep patterns, your exercise patterns, your food, your diet, keep hydrated. And there's a lot of other things, right?
Absolutely. So I think of it as mental energy and input and output. So what we put in, and Maria, whom I dearly love, watches a lot of news sometimes, and she's visiting with me right now. And sometimes I say, "Can we just turn that off? I can't keep taking that input because I know what the output for me is, and it will be mentally draining if I keep taking all that in. That repeat of the same." Negative
stories.
story,
Yes.
right? So inputs, output. So paying attention to what we put in. A lot of people, a lot of clients will talk to me. I'll talk to them about their habits, right? So what are your daily habits? And we'll look at their social media usage, or in getting down the rabbit hole of something that becomes draining for them on their mental energy. So we'll look at that. What else comes to mind for you?
Well, you touched on it, practice gratitude.
Right? Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's been proven scientifically to, really, you can grow new neurons in your brain with the practice of gratitude. When there is nothing else, you've always got that. And when you can't find something to be thankful for, just that today's another day, the sun came up, that there's that breath, that you've got it, you find something. You find something to be grateful for, and you start practicing gratitude. And there is research, I don't have it in front of me to quote the exact research, practicing gratitude before sleep will help sleep. Practicing gratitude when you wake up in the morning will help the outcome of your day. And over time, the practice of gratitude will help build new neural pathways, and over time, a new positive outlook. So again, now we're talking about everyday people taking everyday care of their mental health. Okay? Everyday people where situations can interrupt everyday behaviors and patterns, and we can fall into some what I call over and under. So overwhelm can lead to underperforming, underachieving, that type of thing can lead to over sabotaging yourself with over drinking, over spending, over Netflix binging, over. That is a thing. Over Netflix binging. Okay, well, I've done my share. It's where we break into these patterns that are self-sabotaging. We break out of the patterns that are leading us towards accomplishing our goals and leading to truly realizing our best life. So again, that's all stress. So it goes back to how we cope with stress. And that's what we were talking about in the beginning. So our mental health is tied to how we cope with stress, how we make decisions, even how we're able to serve a greater purpose, serve our community, right? That's another one. When you can give back.
Volunteer. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's considered a little bit of a remedy, a prescription, is to be able to serve others, to get out of your own pain and beyond yourself. That would be a little bit of a way to lift yourself. Actually, you can't help but help yourself as you help someone else. So find something you care about. Even the mental health community has ways to give back. And during this month of mental health awareness, there's ways to serve, ways to do awareness projects. They have all kinds of toolkits online for you. We're going to have all these resources available at the end of the show today and in the show notes. So please check those out. That might be somewhere you'd like to give back as well. So Maria, I'm talking about beliefs. So everybody, I want you to challenge yourself. What do you believe about your mental health? And if you take nothing else away from the show today, I want you to start thinking about it as much as you think about your physical health. Can our mental health change over time?
Yes, absolutely. It can change over time, and there can be some kind of trigger. I'll just give you an example. Taking care of an elderly parent.
Yes.
And being the caregiver for that loved one can be very difficult on one's mental health.
Right.
So that's just one example. Stress from work,
Yes.
which I'm sure a lot of us have experienced.
Yeah.
Feeling overwhelmed.
Yes.
And just something in life asking you to give more than you have.
That's a good way to put it. Something in life asking you to give more than you have to give, right? And that's that draining place, and then not having a way to fill yourself back up. So I feel like you're speaking from personal experience here.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I know you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So in both cases, caregiving,
Mm-hmm.
elderly parent, and work. So how did you solve both of those issues?
Okay, so we are talking about my mother, your mother-in-law, who unfortunately is suffering from dementia. But she's an elderly lady. She's lived a good life. So it's just really it's the way it is we get older and we do have these conditions. But yes, it is very challenging because you see the person changing so much.
Right.
And there's so much you could do to help. But for us, for my family, for our family, we have found very good people to take care of mom. So
Right.
that alleviates some of the stress, right? So it makes it easier. So getting the right help.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. The other thing I heard in that was acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
So mentally was finding the acceptance for where she's at in life and in this stage of life. And then physically was relieving the burden by finding the right help. Sometimes we have to allow help and ask for help, and then allocating the resources there and getting the family together to share that burden. And I have found with some clients that has been a problem for some to be able to do that. But that has been the answer there. So thank you for sharing that. What about with the overwhelm at work?
Well, again, I know a lot of people have experienced this. So I would take it back to each individual. Is it time to get another job?
It could be.
Is it time to move into a different career?
Right.
We're always learning, can always learn something new. Or is it time to say no to your lovely boss and say, is there a way we can maybe lighten up the workload? Or is it time to take that vacation that you haven't been taking?
Yeah.
Because you need to relieve that stress.
Well, Maria started big. Is it time to get a new job? And then she chunked it down to, saying no and taking the vacation. And I think the hardest one out of all of those is saying no. It's learning to say no. That's what I find with clients is that learning to say no, or it's too much, or really learning to set boundaries is what that is, and saying that it's too much for me right now, and how can we find another way to make sure this gets accomplished, but there's too much for me right now. So knowing your own personal limits and then setting that boundary and communicating it to others. So that's a work that I find a lot of people struggle with, but desperately need. And that is one way to take care of your mental health. So yes, career burnout. And sometimes it's not about the work itself. It's about not having proper boundaries in place with the work or the workplace, the specific company and what have you. Okay. It's about being out of balance. They talk about work-life balance. I call it all life balance. Work is just part of it, of life. So it's finding life balance. And that is the key for mental health, is life balance for most of us. Now, I find mental health in general is an individual thing. It's very individual, and our situations affect us differently. Some people are more resilient than others, and I found during COVID, for some, that was some people's first life crisis, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And learning to cope was just happening for them. Other people, it was, hey, this is kind of a little JOMO happening, a little joy missing out for a moment, and kind of regrouping. And for others, it was extremely stressful, and having to learn how to cope with isolation, having to cope with uh, learning to do everything through a screen, and without the connection they were used to. So again, this is a personal journey, and everything's different, but it's to understand you have to first be aware before you can create the change that you need for yourself. So being aware what is happening in life. I'm asking some questions later in the show for you to be able to check in with yourself, have your mental health checkup, as we were mentioning earlier, for yourself. All right, so mental health can change over time, as we were saying, like physical health. It's something to be monitored long term. Whatever stressors are coming and going, look, life, like seasons, like weather, is going to change. So different stressors are going to come and go, situations. Your mental health can be stable and solid one day, it can start deteriorating. So it's always that check-in and finding that balance with that. There is there, and I just have to bring this up because I did a show from Hawaii when Basil and the kids and I were there, and mental health is often also, or the mental health conditions and mental health illness, if you will, and bringing that word back in, because there is still some very specific illness associated with some of the conditions, can be tied to homelessness. So when we look at some of the more serious conditions, environment can play an effect. So environment, growing up in poverty, trauma,
Childhood trauma.
childhood trauma, right? Things that have been outside of one's control can set someone up to have a mental health condition or illness. And a lot of people go undiagnosed, but it's a very prevalent statistic within the homeless community. And something I learned in Honolulu was that one hopeful thing that's happening there is that the police force, who gets inundated with calls about crime related to the homeless population, is that they didn't know how to deal with the challenge, and they have now dedicated a new sector of the police force just to homelessness, and they're being trained on mental health conditions, so that rather than treat them like criminals, they can treat them with compassion and empathy and understanding, and really get them the proper resources to help them rather than punish them. So I find that a beautiful initiative that's happening in the state of Hawaii, and specifically on the island of Oahu. And I look forward to seeing how that helps with statistically with improving that specific population that's experiencing a mental health crisis. But anyway, I'd like to see us normalizing, the practice of prioritizing mental health care in general without more guilt and shame being piled on, right? Because there's a lot of that already.
Yes.
Okay, what else do I want to talk to you about? I want to talk to you about, again, just more of the strengthening the mental health. But we were talking about the individual situation, and I wanted to share. I asked you about your personal experience. Some of the situations, circumstances I've shared with some of you in the show, not to full detail, but in my book, the gift of shift, I have a grief chapter, and I talk about the loss of my firstborn son. And I can tell you that there was a time I remember being in my car, and thinking, I'm just going to press the gas and let the car go where it goes. And the only thing that stopped me was the fear of hurting someone else. I remember being in my first marriage, which was abusive, which I've done shows on domestic violence and abuse, and fearing for my life, too scared to do anything about it until the time came where I was able to have a different motivation. And that was with my second born son, who gave me the courage because of his courage. And that's in another story in The Gift of Shift. But I remember thinking I was going to die and not really caring at some point. And I can tell you the hit on my mental health, even when I got out of the marriage, I had been in survival mode for so long, that fight, flight, freeze, whichever one it was at different times. And it did go back and forth, but I had been in this like stress hormone roller coaster for so long that my mental health had taken a huge toll, whether it was in victim thinking or conflict thinking, helplessness, hopelessness, frustration, humiliation, and all of this. The mental health toll had the physical toll that I've shared before as well, to the point that I wasn't taking care of myself mentally, physically, emotionally, was just havoc until I did. So I do want you to know that there's no one size fits all thing here for anyone, but what's important is taking a first step, wherever it is, from wherever you are. And that black hole that some of us have been in or may be in, sometimes we don't have the strength. We can exercise this mental fitness muscle. Some of us can. We can exercise it. We can nurture it, that we were talking about, treating it like physical fitness. Many of us can, but some of us can't do it enough to get the strength to pull out of the black hole on our own. And that's when it's time to reach out for professional help. And sadly, Maria and I share an experience of the loss of someone very close to us to suicide. And when we talk about language, NAMI also talks about tips for talking about suicide. And they say, rather than saying something like committed suicide, because that sounds like committing a crime, right? It's died by suicide. Our sister-in-law, Heather, died by suicide. And this year was the 10th anniversary of her passing. And so mental health is incredibly important to us to talk about and to share with others. And we'll do another show in September, which is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And we'll specifically talk more about that then. But that's going to be, that is the final, I guess, position, with when it comes to mental health. So let's talk about warning signs of mental illness, which is getting someone close to that point. Feeling sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks. And this all comes from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Feeling sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks. Trying to harm or end one's life or making plans to do so. Severe, out of control, risk-taking behavior that causes harm to self or others. Sudden, overwhelming fear for no reason, sometimes with a racing heart, physical discomfort, or difficulty breathing. Significant weight loss or weight gain. Seeing, hearing, or believing things that are not real. Excessive use of alcohol or drugs. Drastic changes in mood, behavior, personality, or sleeping habits. Extreme difficulty concentrating or staying still. Intense worries or fears that get in the way of daily activities. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, Maria, we'll talk more about
Yeah.
our beloved Heather in September.
Just looking at these,
Yeah.
You and I are sitting going now, right?
Yeah.
After the fact that we realize that she did experience a lot of these things, and the whole family tried to help and did everything we could, but in the end, she did take her own life.
She did. She was in treatment. I want to go ahead and say that. She was in treatment.
Yes.
She was getting help. But
Yes.
I think there was still a level of denial within the family, because it seemed so sudden that she had gotten to this place. So I love that they say for more than 2 weeks, it's, there's something's going on. But if you notice any of these symptoms in yourself or someone else,
others, yeah,
there is help. And we're going to put those, Dan, maybe we can put that up now. Call the NAMI helpline. It's there it is. Thank you, Dan. 1-800-950-NAMI or 6264. And there's a chat line that's up there. There is, if you are in crisis in the moment, just dial 988. There are for 24/7 trained counselors there to talk to you and help you through a crisis in the moment. There's a special teen line too, and I want to talk about that because of COVID. That there's a spike in teens dealing with mental health crisis, and suicide is a huge. I think it's the number.
It's number two.
Number two.
It's number two in that age group, and
okay. So it's a peer-to-peer people who, or for teens that they're experiencing exactly what they're experiencing, that can really relate and talk. So I want teens to know there are people who can talk to you, that get you, that can reach out, that you can reach out to, but all through these same numbers and same website, NAMI.org. For caretakers, like Maria was talking about, caretakers.org is, there's resources to help you. But 50% of all lifetime mental illness, different than the situational ones we described, the type I've experienced, the type Maria's experienced, which was situational, where we were able to build the mental fitness, restore ourselves, refuel ourselves, replenish, pull ourselves out of the black hole. I did go to therapy. For a little bit. Did you ever have therapy in your life, Maria, for anything?
I did not have therapy, meaning with a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but when our sister-in-law passed, I did go to a suicide help group,
yes,
if I could call it that, and it was sort of a group. It was
group.
led by, it was a support group. Thank you. That was the right word. Yes.
Yes, beautiful. So yes, I went to a counselor. I guess she was a therapist for when I was getting out of my marriage, to give me support on how to leave a narcissistic abusive relationship, which I needed because I was still in that fight or flight and self-doubt mode. And I learned a lot and passing it on to others now. But 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by the age of 14. And so those are those deeper diagnoses we were talking about that needs a lifetime of help and might need treatment with medication, and more than just learning how to keep the mental health, that mental fitness muscle strong. So we want to take care of ourselves. We want to take care of one another. We want to know that there are resources out there. You can take a mental health education class through NAMI. Knowledge is power. And there's so many resources available to all of us. We just need to reach out for them. So Dan, I appreciate your putting that information on the screen. So we all play a part, not only in that for ourselves, but in for others. And we're doing that. But you got to first believe that mental health matters, right? That your mental health matters, that those around you, that it matters. Because again, we cannot see it. So got to believe that your actions matter. Exercise. I know, and we know, and we've talked about others that how exercise, nutrition, sleep, as Maria was saying before, these are things that can help us build that endurance. So when the next thing in life happens, and there's always a next thing, that we are better prepared, more resilient, able to stand up in the storm, right? So I said I had some questions for you. I got those. And I want you to look at your daily habits in life, which ones could improve on, and that's sleep, exercise, eating, nutrition, all that stuff we talked about, because you can trick the brain by taking some actions. You can, it's kind of like fake it till you make it with some things, right? So take a serious look at your habits. Where are you already self-sabotaging? All right. So here are your questions. Where are you now? This is the awareness. Where are you now with your mental health? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? That's the goal. Where do you want to be? What will it take for you to get there? That's your plan. What will you do or stop doing every day to move you forward? What will you do or stop doing every day to move you forward? So this goes back to those habits. Sometimes it's not what we're not doing yet, it's what we are doing. So are you sitting on the sofa every night eating a bag of chips and drinking a 6-pack? Is that what sabotage? Is that why you can't sleep? Is that why you wake up and feel bad about yourself and then therefore don't show up for social engagements and don't? I've been there. I can tell you that's what a lot of people do. We self-sabotage in one area and then it connects to all the others. So what will you do or stop doing every day to move you forward? And then how will you measure your success? So what Maria was saying earlier, where's the metric for mental health? There is a metric. There's a metric. It's going to be one that only you know, because again, this is invisible. But where's the metric? It's how you think about yourself, how you self-talk, how you think about others, how you talk about others, how you think about the world around you, and how you show up for it. There's your metric. And then how will you celebrate your success? And in doing so, notice how you grew along the way, because it really is about what you did to get there. It's the journey, as they say, not the destination. And then what's next for you? What's next as you experience this feeling better, this mental health, new mindset, if you will? All right. So we've talked about, when to reach out for professional help. Please pay attention. No, there's no shame in it. That's one thing we really want. By talking about it out loud, and that's what this show is about, healing out loud. By talking about it out loud, we want to take the shame out. Again, let's talk about some of the celebrities. Michael Phelps. What I love about it, not just being celebrity, it's Olympic athletes talking about it. Simone Biles, right?
Yes.
Now that's someone who literally stepped back during the Olympics and said, I can't do this right now, and allowed someone else to step up and compete. Now that's somebody who is saying, my mental health has to take a priority. Michael Phelps, Olympic swimmer. These are people whose bodies they're at the top of physical fitness, right? They're at the top of their game physically, and they say, you know what? I need help with my mental health sometimes. Those are amazing role models.
Yes.
I as I see it, because they take their bodies to the limit, but they still have to work on their mental fitness too. Anything else coming to mind before we say goodbye today?
Yeah, just think about your mind. It is an important structure. It is an organ, the brain, after all. We seem to take care of everything else, but we forget to take care of the most important thing. Like you said neurons, you said pathways.
Yes.
I'll throw in neurotransmitters and different chemicals, our thoughts.
Yeah.
If we get stuck in negative loopholes
Mm-hmm.
and activate those wrong neural pathways,
Yeah.
we really need to try to change that.
Yeah.
And do things that make us happy and activate those positive neural pathways. That's the way I say it, very simplistically.
Yes, and she's a scientist, so we have to get her to say it simplistically is sometimes a little bit of an effort. But I love that, and I teach energy leadership, and it's all about everything's energy, right? Even our thoughts are energy, and Einstein taught us, and I guess other physicists, that everything is energy. So if our thoughts are energy, and we can't destroy energy, we can only change it. We have to change the thought. We can't kill it, and we know that when it keeps us up at night, right? So we want to change it from negative to positive. That's the answer. So again, we know it's not that easy, and it's not simply that easy for everyone, and certainly some people need more help than others, but we can do things to help ourselves, everyone. So that's the things that we talked about that we can all try to do to keep our life in balance. Oh, I'm going to say this real quick. I often have people tell me I don't have time. I don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time for this. I don't have time for my physical workout. I have time where I think about my mental workout. Blah, 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 blah. We are all created equal when it comes to time. I get 24. You get 4. She gets 24. Dan, you get 24. We all get 24 hours. Now, what are we going to do with them? How do we choose to spend them? And that's where sometimes you got to say no here so that you can say yes over there. But we're all created equal. So time I do not allow to be an excuse with my clients. We have to find the way and choose how we're going to spend those hours and budget them just like we do with dollars. So think about that. How can you reevaluate how you use your time? Again, habits, do you get down a rabbit hole here? Be smarter with your smartphones, things like that. I could keep on talking, but I believe we're about out of time. So I hope that our time today together has helped you see mental health as part of your daily routine and your overall well-being, and that your mindset matters, that your mind matters, your brain matters, that self-care matters. I hope that you'll prioritize mental fitness, and in so doing that you find life balance and face inevitable challenges in the future with greater ease. So as we conclude this episode of Soul CPR Healing Out Loud, just remember that healing is not a linear journey. It is a process of profound transformation. And if today's stories resonated with you, please share the podcast with those who might need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. Connect with me on social media. You'll find me on Facebook at Skyview Coaching and on all those other platforms at Ann Papayoti. I'd love to hear from you and know your thoughts and your stories and any ideas you have for future episodes on the podcast. And so until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. I'm Ann Papayoti. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Maria, for joining me again. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayoti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.